God's hand in the halls of power. When we open Luke's gospel in the book of Acts, we tend to see them as straightforward history, stories of Jesus' ministry and the birth of the church. And they are. But what if Luke was doing more? What if his words were carefully shaped for the ears of Rome itself? Both books begin with a dedication to a man named Theophilus. Luke calls him Most Excellent Theophilus, Luke 1:3, Acts 1:1, a title used in the first century for Roman officials of rank and status. Some have wondered if Theophilus was more than just a curious friend. Could he have been a Roman magistrate or even legal counsel preparing to defend Paul before Caesar? If so, Luke's careful writing takes on a new depth. It becomes more than record keeping. It becomes testimony, a defense brief, a way of showing that the gospel was no threat to the empire and that God himself was guiding the story through Rome's very halls of power. Think about Pilate. Other gospels show his hesitation, but Luke presses the point again and again. Pilate declares Jesus innocent 3 times. After examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Luke 23:14. Pilate is portrayed as reluctant, pressured by the mob, almost sympathetic. The guilt rests squarely on the religious leaders. Rome, Luke seems to say, was not the true villain here. And then we walk into Acts and something surprising happens. Rome's centurions keep showing up, and not as enemies. Cornelius, a centurion of the Italian cohort, is the first Gentile to hear the gospel and be baptized into Christ. A man respected, disciplined, loyal to Caesar, and yet humble enough to fall at Peter's feet in reverence. God chose him as the doorway for the nations. Later, when Paul is seized in Jerusalem, it is a centurion who stops the unlawful beating and runs to tell the commander about Paul's Roman citizenship. That single word, civis Romanus, was enough to halt the lash. Roman law stepped in to protect God's servant. When a plot to kill Paul was uncovered, the commander called for 2 centurions and ordered them to prepare nearly 500 men to escort him safely to Caesarea. Picture that, assassins in the shadows, but Paul guarded by Rome's finest, Providence wearing Roman armor. And then Julius, the centurion of the Augustan cohort, enters the story. He is no ordinary soldier. Centurions were the backbone of the Roman army, men promoted for loyalty, courage, and steadiness. They commanded about 100 men, received double the pay of common soldiers, and were respected as men who held the line when others faltered. Julius was such a man. He treated Paul kindly, allowing him to visit friends along the journey. And when the storm came and the ship splintered on the rocks, Julius prevented the soldiers from killing the prisoners. His decision spared Paul's life and fulfilled God's promise that not one would be lost. Not once in Acts do we find a centurion opposing the gospel. Instead, they are protectors, allies, converts. And the governors, Gallio, Felix, Festus, Agrippa, all of them repeat the same refrain: Paul is not guilty. Again and again, Rome itself is declaring the innocence of Christ's servants. Of course, we need to remember, Rome was no gentle friend of the gospel. This same empire that shielded Paul in Acts would soon unleash brutal waves of persecution. The same halls of power that declared him innocent would one day thunder with verdicts against his brothers and sisters. Rome was merciless. Rome was cruel. But Luke isn't painting Rome as the hero. Far from it. What he shows us is something greater, that God can use even a brutal empire to accomplish his purposes. Rome thought it was enforcing order. God was opening doors for the gospel. And that irony still makes us stop and marvel. The empire that crucified Jesus also carried Paul safely to Caesar's court. The empire that would one day persecute the church was for a season the unwitting shield of the apostle. That's not Rome's goodness, it's God's providence. The very empire that seemed immovable became the stage for God's unstoppable plan. And if he could move through Rome's halls of power, he can move through the systems and structures of our lives too. Through your workplace, through your community, even through governments and courts. His providence has not grown weak. His hand has not grown short. The God who brought Paul before Caesar is the same God guiding you today. Where do you see his providence weaving through places you never expected? Share it. I'd love to hear how he's working in your story.